In my last video, I failed to go into enough detail on the hydraulic launch system found on Kingda Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure. And in case anyone was interested on how that hydraulic launch system is different than the other launch systems, I have left a link to CoasterBot's video, Roller Coaster Launches Explained, in the description below. He goes into a lot of detail about all launch systems, not just hydraulic. I highly recommend checking it out. When Cedar Fair purchased the Paramount parks in the mid-2000s, they immediately started pouring money into some of the parks. Paramount's Great America was not necessarily one of them, and it took all the way till 2013 for them to receive their first coaster under Cedar Fair. The new coaster would be built by GCI, and it would go right around the Sky Tower that was already there at the park. In 2013, guests could experience Goldstriker for the first time. But after a decade of operation, how does it hold up? That's what we're going to discuss in this review. Right off the bat, I want to say that this coaster is one that I have very fond memories of. It was one of the first coasters that really wowed me when I rode it for the first time. And for a while, it was my favorite roller coaster that I had ever been on. And looking at the ride, it's pretty easy to see why. As I said, this ride is located in the front of the park, right across from the carousel. And I think it makes a great impression when you walk into California's Great America and see the beautiful entrance and Goldstriker towering to your right. While Goldstriker only stands 108 feet tall and only reaches a top speed of 53 miles an hour, this leads me to one of Goldstriker's biggest strengths. GCI did a great job with the layout, and in turn, this ride has really good pacing. Outside of the crest of a few hills, you never really slow down. Now, let's dig into the ride experience, since there really isn't too much to talk about. Goldstriker does have comfortable Millennium Flyer trains, but no theming to speak of whatsoever. The ride starts with a few turns out of the station and some dips. These don't really provide much force outside of a little bit of laterals, but it does give you a taste of what's to come. You then come face to face with the lift hill and start ascending until you reach the 108 foot tall peak, before coming to the ride's first drop. If you like getting airtime on drops like I do, then you're unfortunately out of luck with Goldstriker's drop because of how it twists. With that being said though, the subsequent bunny hill does give some good floater airtime, especially if you're sitting up front. These two moments to start are probably my favorite parts of the ride. And from here, Goldstriker becomes an absolute mess, in a good way. Track going every which way, with various hills giving airtime, tunnels providing variety, and lateral moments. However, unfortunately, you might start to notice something about Goldstriker. It's rough. There isn't a specific part of the ride where I can think of it being more rough than the other sections. The whole ride is just very shaky. And I know some people get headaches when they come off of Goldstriker, which is really too bad. Because as I said earlier, this layout is brilliant. How it weaves in and around itself and provides so many different forces is awesome. And while the comfortable Millennium Flyer trains do the best they can to absorb the blows, they ultimately can't absorb all of them. And while it hurts me to say it, Goldstriker is probably one of the roughest coasters I've ever ridden. With that major complaint though, I still enjoy it. And I don't regret putting this at the top of my list at all a few years ago. However, it's just too rough for me to enjoy nearly as much as I would want to. A full retrack of Goldstriker would do absolute wonders. And every time I go to ride it, I would be super excited for the experience to come. And just the final note on this roughness then, I think that's actually one of the things Great America needs to do most, retrack this coaster, because it can be elite if it's running smooth. I also like this ride's use of tunnels, and they are quite frequent throughout the experience. In general, Goldstriker is a fun ride. I know some people say this is the best wooden coaster in California, and while I don't personally agree, I can see where they're coming from a layout perspective. And it really does have some fun elements throughout. So for Goldstriker's final score, I'm going to give it a reluctant 8 out of 10. I would really like to give this ride a higher score, but because of the roughness, I just can't. I have some very fond memories of this coaster over the years, but as of right now, it desperately needs a retrack. And here is a perfect example of what a rough ride can do to a great layout. Even with my complaining, I think it still deserves an 8 out of 10.